Well, hello again, and welcome again to another episode of Down to Earth but Heavenly Minded podcast. And I'm your host, Herb. And today I thought we'd look at an article by Charles Henry McIntosh, and it is on words of counsel. Now, one thing about this article, it was never really intended for publication. So let's read the prefatory notes. The following little paper was never intended for publication. It was written expressly and exclusively for two very dear and valued friends. A brother who I greatly love and esteem happened to see it, urged me to give it to him with the view to publication. I demurred, but my friend so eagerly pressed me to allow him to print it that I gave away. May the Lord graciously design to use it. CHM, Dublin, February 14th, 1889. Okay, number one. You enter the room and find the fire all but out. There seems scarcely a trace of vitality. The fire irons are there, all polished and laid in order. But what could they do? Nothing. 1,000 sets of the most splendorous fire irons could not produce a single spark. There must be a living hand to move them, or they will lie there motionless and powerless. What is to be done? You seize the poker, rake out the ashes, and introduce a current of air. Then you stir up the almost dead lumps of coal, and in a few moments you have a brilliant and beautiful fire. Who thinks of praising the poker? Who would say, "Dear, what a marvelous poker"? It is not the lifeless poker, but the living hand that did the work. Truly, the hands used the poker, but the poker is useless without the hands. Now, there is a fine moral lesson here for all who are in the very way using the Lord's blessed work. We have ever to bear in mind that the works that are done upon the earth, God is the doer of them. If He designed to use us, let us never forget that we are but mere instruments, just as helpless and powerless as the poker. No doubt we have enjoyed in the work, but we are not dealing with the question of enjoyment but ability. If any real work is done, God is the doer of it. To Him be all the glory. Who then is Paul and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom ye believed, even as the Lord gave to every man? I have planted, Apollos waters, but God gives the increase. So then, neither is he that plants anything, and neither he that watereth, but God that gives the increase. 1 Corinthians 3, verses 5 through 7. Now, it is a very serious thing to attach undue importance, to give an undue place to men, how much soever they may be used of the Lord's work. We have seen the work marred and the workman morally ruined by the very thing. It is a fatal mistake. Men are taken out of the place in which God has put them and are lulled listlessly and gazing at the sort of phenomena. Their lives are written and published before their death. In this way, they are lifted into an entire false position, like a person walking on stilts. Then some terrible fall comes to bring them to their senses and recalls them to their true place. You know, the Lord's servant should carefully guard against terrible evils. See how the blessed Master ever retired from human applause and human excitement. When men wondered at the teaching, he said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me." When they would come and take him by force and make him king, he retired into the mountains to pray. When they wanted him to show himself to the world, he said, "My time is not yet come." When even find him hiking himself, blessing for forever in his precious, peerless name. Oh, to drink more into the Spirit and walk in his footsteps, to be well content, to be nothing and a nobody, so that Christ may be magnified. May God grant us this immense favor. Now, the second article, number 2. I remember coming into a room one day and seeing a fire very low, indeed nearly out, and on examining it more closely I observed about a half a dozen dying embers scattered all over the little help with over the bottom of the grade, quite too often apart to help one another, each find fading away for when or want of a little help. What was to be done? To throw in a lot of fresh material would simply be to put the whole thing helplessly out. The embers could not help the coals, and the coals could only quench the embers. At once I hit upon a very plan. I gently gathered the scattered embers close together, and the little bit of life in each soon made a good bit of life in all, and a little company of dying embers became quite a nice little collective fire, capable of acting on some fresh material. Here, though, I is a fine lesson for me. If I come to a place and find the Lord's beloved people in a very low, feeble, dying state, I must just seek to get them together and mutually help and blessings in order that they may be a continuation to act on others outside. This mutual help is of all importance. People are so proud to learn upon gifted men, and they cannot have such. They get discouraged and scatter instead of just lovingly together and helping one another in their mutual faith. Now we come to number 3. On another occasion, the housemaid was called to attend a fire in the sitting room. She found it just as I had found mine, but she adopted a different mode of treatment. Instead of collecting the embers in a few moments, all were black and cold. The block could not help the embers, and they went out of place. The embers were not in the condition to profit by it. Now I learned a lesson from this. I said that block is just like a big brother coming into a feeble little meeting, and instead of seeking to strengthen and develop the little uh, mortals of life is in the feeble few, he takes the place of a factorum and sets them entirely aside. This must be carefully avoided. Let every servant of the Lord watch and pray and live against this evil, and not suffice the big brother or the minister to be put upon them. How beautiful are the words of the inspired apostle in the epistle to the Romans. I long to see you that I may impart to you some spiritual gifts, and to end ye may be established. That is, that I myself be comforted together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me. Romans 1, verses 11 and 12. This is uncommon. This is uncommonly found a very opposite of the big brother principle. Only think of the blessed servant of Christ, the greatest teacher the church has ever had, longing to be comforted by the faith of the very feeble saints in the assembly. He longs for fellowship. He was ready to help, but he did not want to monopolize. He would not quench the dying embers, but gathered them together and edified them, that he and they might be comforted together. Nothing can exceed the moral beauty of this. It is simply divine. May we all learn from it. Assuredly, we all need it. There is danger on both sides. Some are in danger of taking too much upon them, others of taking too little. May we all be in such conditions of souls, such an attitude of heart as we fits us for little work, uh, in which the grace of the Lord may be pleased to use us, not seeking a place for ourselves, but lovingly serving all. The Lord, in his great mercy, grant that thus it may be with all his blessed people.